Today we're joined by Ahren Boulanger. He's the owner and founder of Pleasant Counter. It's a restaurant in Springdale, specializing in burgers, and they have a passion for sustainability and locally sourced ingredients. Ahren, how are you doing?
Doing great.
Thanks for being here. So normally to get the show, normally to get the show kicked off, we just ask our guests to give a little bit of the backstory, a little bit about you, where you started, the genesis, if you will, how you got started with Pleasant Counter, how all of that came to be. So in your own words.
Yeah, for sure. So really, I've always wanted I used to want to open a ramen shop, actually.
Nice.
Like 15 years ago. This was in California. We're originally from California. I know it's, it's like a bad word, 4-letter word, but
people in Arkansas have opinions.
Yeah,
we're glad you're here.
And then even worse, by way of Texas. So not worse, but so we moved here in 2022, the beginning of. And so I was trying to get a job actually because we sold our house and we had like little 10 acres. And so we were kind of homesteading and had a fermentation business doing sauerkraut. We had like weird flavors. So it was like a beet, ginger, orange peel, a Japanese curry with apples and, just kind of different rather than just regular old sauerkraut. Mm-hmm. So COVID kind of tanked it. We shut it down. We sold our house. We were like, we had friends in the area. We'd been here. We loved the area. So we're like, let's go somewhere different. Mm-hmm. And so we went and we came. And I was looking for a job. Couldn't find one. And so I was like, had money burning a hole in my pocket. So I was like, I guess let's just open a restaurant.
Nice, as one does.
Yeah, not exactly. But, at first it started with...
Call me next time you guys want to spend some,
It was like... the thing is when we were doing sauerkraut, we were seeing people doing hot food at farmers markets and stuff, and they're going home with $1,500, $2,000. And I was like, we're lucky if we're hitting 300,
Yeah.
So I was like, I wanted to do it then, but whatever. It was cost prohibitive at the time, so we just didn't do it. So when we came here and we were talking about doing something, I actually was thinking about like a retail, like a mixed retail and like cafe type thing, like be able to offer some food, but also offer like a fermentation store. So scobies, dehydrated sourdough starters, brew kits, whatever, right? And then also have classes. And I had this whole thing where I was like, and because it was a retail spot that we had originally looked at and whatever. So, but they had built out a kitchen and the owner is a Filipino guy and they were making Filipino food, but primarily catering to the Marshallese community in Springdale. Mm-hmm. So basically, because the food's not exactly the same, but obviously the people in the Marshall Islands like Filipino food. Mm-hmm. So, excuse me, this cider got me.
You're good.
So we started, at first we were like, I guess we need to make Filipino food because we had all these people coming in. But so we kind of just scratched the whole retail idea, the fermentation store aspect of it, just because the kitchen was built out really nice. It wasn't exactly the same as I had originally thought or saw in the pictures in the listing. And so, when we saw how they had built out the kitchen, we were like, this is just too good. Everything comes with it. They probably spent a ton of money building out the kitchen. I mean, it's kind of honestly overkill in a good way. And we just kind of embraced it and just leaned into it and went full force towards restaurant. My wife was not down. She did not want, she did not immediately want to.
Have y'all done a restaurant before? Or this is the first one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. It's
a very unique thing to jump into.
People have big opinions too when it comes to it. Cause it's tough. And I kind of just went after it. Like I said, we started doing the whole Filipino thing. I started making this pork blood stew called dinaguan. In Marshallese, they call it patek-tek, I believe. But a lot of times they would just come in, the Marshallese folks would come in and they were expecting the old restaurant. And I'm standing there and I'm like, and so they're like, sometimes they would just look at me and be like, do you got the blood? And I'm like, I don't know what that means. You know, like I had no idea. And
Is it
so
a Marshallese restaurant or a Baptist church?
yeah, right. You got the blood. And I was like, and sometimes just bloody blood. They would just look at me and be like, you got the bloody blood? And I was like,
Oh my gosh.
know. So eventually I talked to enough people where I figured out that like would tell me about what they were talking about, what everyone wanted. And so I was like, oh, the bloody blood is blood stew. It's called Dinagwan in Tagalog. It's not called that in Marshallese, but whatever. So I started researching it. I started doing all this stuff. I was making like quesadobo tacos, like quesabirria, but like with pork adobo. I was doing like all this weird stuff, which is cool and fun, but they were like, that's not what I want, bro. I just want the blood, you know? So like I started making it. I basically had to research rather than just copying a recipe. I like dug deep and read 100 recipes and then watched old granny videos on YouTube, you know, auntie videos, whatever, like people making it. Some that were all just in Filipino or Pinoy or whatever. They're all in Tagalog, but you know, like from different regions of the Philippines. I'm like just going deep on it. And so, because, you know, I don't want to just copy a recipe.
Right.
Because there you see so many variations, but you see like a common theme throughout. So it's kind of like, as long as you hit these points, you can kind of do it how you want. You know, you can kind of, as long as it tastes like the thing, you can do different things.
So you're more or less understanding the dish itself rather than like instructions.
That's right. Yeah. So I tried to understand it so that then I could just create my own recipe. So that's what I did. I started making it. Everybody was super down, whatever. But eventually I think we were charging too much. They wanted it for like, they just want a little thing, no rice. They don't want no rice, even though you serve it with rice, but they have their own rice and they don't want our rice. You know, they probably want to take it home, make rice fresh, and then enjoy it with some salad or whatever, you know. So I think they wanted to pay like $4 or $5, and we were charging like for a little bit larger size, we were going to charge $9, but we were trying to use organic ingredients, and they probably just didn't care. And they're like, bro, I just want the blood, you know. So eventually that fell off, and so we stopped doing it. We were just doing it on Saturdays so that like, and then we would advertise like blood stew today or whatever. And then our regular customers coming in for burgers, like, what's blood stew, you know? So eventually we stopped doing it. We just leaned into like a simple menu, which is what you've seen.
Yeah, it's like 4 or 5 items.
Yeah,
little kids menu.
There's a lot of customization that's kind of like hidden in there. I don't, you know, I'm not like purposely trying to be cryptic. I just don't want to clutter up the menu.
Yeah.
But I keep jalapenos. I keep lettuce and tomato. It's just not how I like a burger. So I just put it the way that I like it. And then if people want lettuce, tomato, jalapenos, whatever, you know, bacon, I try and keep bacon. So I just don't advertise.
Yeah, do a few things and do them really well. And that's all you have to,
that's kind of, right. That's kind of what I was, you know, the philosophy I was trying to embrace. So, you know, we make our own mayo. A big part of all of this was no seed oils. We want to make a restaurant. If we're going to do this, we want to do it like we eat at home. Yeah. Because like the whole thing is we can't really go out to eat and eat exactly like how we eat at home, which we still like to go out to eat. And, you know, I'll still like seed oil fries every now and again, but I would prefer not to eat them. You know? So that's kind of what really motivated us, or, you know, whatever. And yeah, I went through a bunch of iterations of what I was going to do, kind of testing it like long term, which, you know, it's costly. It kind of keeps you not like, you're not able to really advance and start building that customer base until you kind of lock something in. So that took me a while. But once I did, I was like, okay, what would I eat every day? I would either eat a chicken sandwich, a burger, or maybe like a shrimp po' boy, because a lot of people don't want meat per se, or, you know, they're okay with, you know, fish or shrimp, but they don't want meat, or, you know, if it's Good Friday and people aren't eating, whatever. Yeah. So I'm just like, I don't have to offer a bunch of vegetarian and vegan options, but I do have like a really good salad with a house-made vinaigrette and, you know, whatever. So, because we're not, you know, I mean, our whole thing is like more animal based. I mean, we fry our French fries in beef tallow, grass-fed beef tallow. We're using local grass-fed beef as, you know, as much as we can. It's hard to, they're not like a huge operation, so they don't always have beef available. So we have to we have to improvise. But luckily, good grass-fed beef, organic grass-fed beef is readily available. And we just try and use, wild-caught Gulf shrimp. It's not like the best, most sustainable shrimp on the planet.
Right.
But I got to, weigh the cost and whatever. And
absolutely.
Still do something that's good. It's not injected with tricalcium phosphate or whatever. And, all these things that they do to a lot of commercial shrimp that come out of Southeast Asia and whatever. So anyway, and then we use chicken. We use George's chicken, which is actually, it's not certified organic, but they feed organic feed at their farms. It's just costly to get an actual organic certification at every single farm in your network as a large chicken operation. So that's like the highest quality chicken we can get. So that's what we use. Grass-fed beef, like I said, out of Elkins, the Howard farm. When possible, which is usually every week, but sometimes there's a dip in whatever.
Yeah.
So that's just, we just try to keep it simple, do it like that. There's a lot of other, like I said, there's a lot of other offerings. Like if I'll do whatever somebody wants. Somebody's like, oh, can you make me a burger quesadilla? I'm like, I actually can do that, but I'm not going to put it on the menu.
Yeah.
We just try and be flexible. We have a lot of really good customers that are regulars that come every week, if not twice a week. Everybody has kind of just started hearing about us, especially if they, eat this way or eat this way at home or, just kind of live like seed oil free it sounds cheesy or like fattish, but
yeah.
That's what it is.
I'm curious how many, like coming from California and then Texas and then here, what is the restaurant scene like where you came from in both of those locations to what it is now? Because I know that Northwest Arkansas is moving in that direction. There's a lot more options than there was 10 or 15 years ago, but absolutely. I'm not in the restaurant business. So talk a little bit about like how Pleasant Counter fits into what exists now.
Yeah. In California, it's always changing, obviously, but right now, the last time I visited, there's like a heavy Middle Eastern and Peruvian influence in like South Orange County. Like if you're making burritos, they might be like a lomo saltado burrito, or they're doing weird things with a lot of cool influences. I personally love Peruvian food. And there's a couple Peruvian restaurants in South Orange County that like have gained popularity over the past 30 years. So like other restaurants are seeing like their staying power, I guess you could say, because if you look at two of the main ones, one's called Nori's and one's called Inca Grill. They've been around since like the late 90s or even earlier. And so you have new restaurants popping up and of course they're going to just do some competitive analysis, look at what other people are doing, what's working long term. And so it's ever changing, obviously. And like you said, Northwest Arkansas is growing as far as like diversity in food or whatever you want to call it, like options. I wouldn't say that it's so like forward that it's like, that like a lot of people, I think if you go too far too quick in certain areas, people are like, oh, what is that? I don't know what that is. Kind of like the quesadobo tacos, people were like, with like a pork adobo consomme to dip their taco in. It was just too weird, I think if you could do it for I never really gave it even a chance.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I got to shift. It's too much, And as far as Texas goes, we lived in Austin for 4 years. And obviously the food scene's good. But, I'm just sick of paying $300 to go. A lot of times if you want to eat something like, now there are obviously budget options, I guess if you want to call them that. But yeah, Austin's cool. Tons of good food, a lot of like barbecue and Asian fusion. I know, fusion's kind of a passe term nowadays because everything's fusion. So it's kind of like doesn't really exist.
Buzzword.
Yeah. Well, like in the 80s, everyone was like fusion. 80s and 90s, like fusion. And then it became kind of cheesy. But now then everything just became like hyper fusion. Everybody's doing everything. So Yeah, I mean, and that's for me, like, I love Asian food. I love Indian food. I love, Latin American food. I just love food, I guess. So, and I've just traveled a lot. And so eating all over the world, it gives you kind of like a cool perspective and whatever. So, but yeah, I mean, as far as Pleasant Counter, I mean, it's, we're just trying to, like, we do our mayo, which is just a Kewpie mayo clone, a Japanese mayo clone, just because I prefer it over any other mayo. So rather than imitating or cloning just American mayonnaise, I just prefer Kewpie mayo.
You make what you like.
Yeah, just except, with avocado oil instead of soybean or canola oil or whatever. And instead of MSG, I use something else to give it like an umami, kind of pack in some umami punch in there. But yeah, I mean, really the only major difference with Japanese mayo is that they just use, egg yolks only as opposed to the whole egg. It's just like creamier and eggy or whatever. So, yeah. So anyway, it's, I'm not trying to like be like Asian fusion. It's just what I prefer. And it happens to be.
It comes out in your work, just like with any other kind of craftsman.
Absolutely.
Like their preferences are going to come out in their work in some form or fashion. I can't help but refer things back to episodes of Seinfeld all the time. You were talking about going too far with something.
Sorry.
I immediately think about when Jerry had the Pakistani guy across the street from his apartment that opened a restaurant that had food from every country. It's like all this menu of like all of these world cuisines. And he told him, it's like, you're Pakistani. Like, why don't you make this a Pakistani restaurant?
Yeah.
And so it's like, Jerry, you're so right. And so he converted it to all Pakistani. And then he went out of business.
And then nobody
knew what it was. Nobody understood it. He's watching out the window and nobody's going in. And he's sitting there patting himself on the back for like giving such great advice. And so the guy ends up hating his guts. But that's immediately what I think about.
It's like Indian food, but with beef.
Basically.
What is the deal? It's true. It's like if you, sometimes it can bite you if you're not careful. So, yeah.
I guess it's probably just like we talk about sometimes the entrepreneurial ecosystem and our level of maturity as far as, density and experience and that sort of thing. And I feel like the restaurant scene has its own measure of maturity as well, too, based on the density of our region and kind of the diversity of it. Because even if there's 1 million people in some town in Nebraska, if it's not diverse, they're still probably not going to explore the Pakistani restaurant. They got to have that level of diversity to kind of, I guess, gut check you on some of that stuff.
Right. I mean, I think people like learning about the cool new thing that they've never had. They're like, ooh, Thai food. What's that? I don't think people are like that necessarily. But, for the most part, people know what Thai food is. But, people are like,
I like my sushi deep fried.
Right. People, I think that in food scenes or, whatever, for lack of a better term, like Northwest Arkansas, where it's kind of rapidly evolving based on the demographics and, population density, like increasing, and the diverse population of or influx of people. Yeah, I mean, I think people are like, they fancy themselves adventurous, and they want to. Even your, I'm not saying like your average college-y hipster or whatever, for lack of another silly term, but but like random old people, they're like who've never had a lot of diverse influences as far as food goes. They're like, yeah, like I want to try new things.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that is happening. So
until they get to the counter and see blood stew Saturday.
until they see blood stew. Yeah, they're like, what's bloody blood?
Pretty sure I've seen that made on an episode of Parts Unknown. I'm pretty sure Anthony Bourdain made
a one.
It was like lemongrass. It might be different. It was like some lemongrass in the blood and some other stuff.
Yeah, I mean the thing is, blood stews go like they're everywhere throughout history. It
just does not sound appetizing to me.
Well, have you had it? I mean, I guess so because you made it.
Yeah.
It's actually delicious. I'm not huge on pork in general. I do like pork. I like bacon. I'm a human being who likes meat and bacon, but I try and mostly eat beef, and not to be all like, oh, it's but like if you look at like beef cattle, ruminants in general, they have multiple stomachs. They actually have a better, or they have an ability to process out more toxins. Whereas fowl, chickens, turkey, whatever, pigs, monogastric animals don't have as great of ability of like processing out the toxins out of their fat and their skin. So it'll actually like, there will be more forever chemicals potentially in poultry. I mean, everybody eats chicken. It's like the healthiest thing. Eat chicken. But it's like, and of course, if a lot of people do eat chicken breast, which has low fat and they don't eat the skin. So, you're avoiding some of that. But who likes chicken breast? I prefer chicken thigh.
It's harder to get right.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is like you got to brine it or marinate it or cook it in a cast iron just right to make it juicy. We use thighs on our fried chicken sandwich because
it's good.
You can't mess it up. You don't have to brine it. At first I was brining them and I was like, like a pickle juice type mixture. And I was like, it's still good if you just fry it, so yeah.
Well, I know that recently you won a competition locally in Springdale and then you went to Dallas, I think, to continue that competition. Talk a little bit about that whole experience.
Yeah, it was kind of last minute. We got a call from her name's Peggy. She runs the Miracle League out of Little Rock, but there's like Miracle League Little Rock and then there's Miracle League Northwest Arkansas. It's basically just a baseball league for people with disabilities, play baseball. But they throw a qualifying event or host a qualifying event for the World Food Championship. So in this situation, it was for burger. And yeah, she called us and we had heard about it, but we were like, I don't want to spend the money and we're busy and blah, 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 whatever. We were just like putting it off. And then it was too late, or we thought it was too late. So we just forgot about it. She called us and she's like, hey, blah, blah, blah. I was talking to so-and-so. William, I believe his name is, the owner of Bienvenue in Springdale, French restaurant. And he always brings his guys in for burgers, once a week or so, and they'll come in and eat burgers. So they love our burger. And so he told her, hey, you should get Pleasant Counter to enter their burger. It's a really good burger, or whatever. I don't know what he said. I wasn't there, but you know what I mean. And so she called us. She's like, hey, I heard this, blah, blah, blah. You should really do it, And we're like, okay, we're down. Let's go for it. It's not that much money. It's for a good cause, whatever. So with like a week to prepare, we're just going to do our regular burger and just put that out.
And this is in Springdale.
In Springdale, yes. And so, yeah, we did it. We showed up. We just made our burgers, gave them to them. Like, it was so I didn't want to cook it too early because it was like 40 degrees that day and kind of rainy. And I was like, it's outside. Yeah. And I'm like, you have like a turn-in window or a turn-in time. And I was like, if I just cook these, like, because I'm trying to prepare and be, not miss my turn-in window, then they're going to get cold. Like 100% it's going to be cold. Like, that's silly. So it was just the last minute. I gave us like 7 minutes to cook 6 burgers. And we were just like, and just did them real quick. And then they gave us like these plastic little containers that you're supposed to put it in to turn it in. But it like was sitting next to the griddle, the flat top, and it sort of melted. And it was made from like corn plastic, they're like compostable. So it's plastic, but it's corn plastic. And so it totally melted. And so we were like, we don't have a thing. And they're like, here. The dudes had like gloves on. So they were just like, boom, boom, grabbed our burgers like, with their hands and like walked them over to the blind
That's awesome.
taste testing judge booth or whatever. Cause they're in there like they can't see who it's coming from.
Yeah.
And so they just were like gloved hand to gloved hand. And they like grabbed the burgers, walked over there. So I know they ate them hot, and yeah, I mean, they were like, oh, and the winner is Pleasant Corner. And I was like, it's counter, but thank you.
Close enough.
Close enough. Yeah, I don't care. I was just like, wait, what? Because I was over, like, we were still doing samples for like the general public. And so I was actually on the griddle cooking when they were doing the announcements. Plus I was kind of like, I feel weird about like staying there and be like, you know, I don't know. And I was doing stuff. So I was like, oh, whatever. Yeah. Like, if they call my name, they call my name.
Have y'all announced yet?
Yeah. And so I'm just like standing there with my back to them doing burgers, and they're like, Pleasant Corner. And I was like, wait, what? You know? And so anyway, they gave us first place. And they're like, you get a golden ticket to the World Food Championships. So essentially I just had to go register, whatever. And it was like in 3 weeks. Some of the people are coming from Japan, Korea, France, all around the world. And they've had like 4 or 5, 6 months to prepare because their qualifying event, was, 6 months ago. Whereas mine was 3 weeks before. So we just kind of got it together and we're like, am I going to try and do some crazy thing, or am I just going to do the same burger? So we decided to just do the same burger. Unfortunately, we had some pretty tough cooking conditions because, again, it was cold and rainy outside, and you weren't allowed to have a flame in the event center. So they had these little like booths sectioned off where you had like a stove, an electric stove, a microwave. I was like, I'm not going to use any of this stuff. I just need a dang flat top. And so they're like, oh, yeah, the flat top's outside. It was like this big. I could maybe fit 2 burgers on there. So we just had to kind of like crowd the griddle. It wasn't getting hot, whatever. Like it was no big deal. We just did our thing, but it was definitely not the same burger that we put out at the restaurant.
Right.
We couldn't get like a crust on it, because it wouldn't get hot enough. The onions were kind of like starting to give off water too much, and there wasn't enough room because everything was crowded. So it starts to like steam your burgers. It's like, it's not. There's just too much steam. Yeah. It's like a boiled burger. Like, I don't want a boiled burger.
So it's a cooking competition, but we're not going to give you the tools to cook.
I think it's just part of their thing. They're like, ooh, we're going to make it extra hard. But also it gives you some ideas on like, well, if I'm going to go next year, I'm going to do my burger differently. I'm going to like reverse sear it and I'll just slow cook it in the oven. And then I'll pull it out and just hit it on like a hot skillet real quick to give it a char on the electric stove.
Did you see some people at the competition who maybe had been in the past and they kind of knew some of those things?
Just like a clothes iron and just...
I know, right? Or even like you could just cook them in the oven and then just hit it with like a blowtorch just to get it crispy or something. I don't know. I mean, I would have to like... if I'm going to do it again, I'm going to have to like figure out a different method of cooking because I don't like cooking a burger over a grill, like an open flame, because all the grease drips onto the flames. It overburns the burger. It gets too much char on the burger, then it's not juicy and it's like dry and burnt and
burn on the outside, raw on the inside.
Yeah, I mean, I like it in theory. I like the taste of like fire, but I would, and those are all outside too. So it would have to be like on a tray, cook them in the oven while you're doing everything else. And then, so anyway, little things like that, they don't tell you necessarily like how it's going to be. And, we could have decorated our little platter better, but overall we got 7th in the first round, which was the top 96.75 percentile, essentially. So
that's awesome.
We were still like, okay, well, that's cool. The top 7 people were within 3 points of 100, and the top 2 both got perfect scores. Wow. And they had some tiebreaker. I don't know how they determined it.
As my dad would say, it's better than a poke in an eye.
That's right. Yeah. And so essentially I'm like, well, that's still 7th best burger in the world. And then, in the country, we're the fourth best because somewhere in Georgia and whatever, and the guy who won the burger, the first round, he's in Little Rock. So he actually,
cool.
so two of the best burgers in the country are actually
Come on,
in
Arkansas.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
That's awesome.
Who in Little Rock?
His name is Ahren Bradshaw. He runs him and his wife run a food truck called Chrissy's Pub Style.
Interesting.
All right.
Yeah.
Just
I didn't
curious,
even get to see his burger other than pictures. Like that's the other thing. You're not like, you don't get to look and see what other people are doing. It's like the whole thing's kind of just quick. And then when you turn it in, there's like a red carpet and there's all these dudes and, well, both women and men dressed in like these referee shirts, like black and white striped shirts. And and on the back is a cheferee.
That's kind of fun.
And they're like blowing whistles as you're walking
It's
down
dorky, but I think it's fun.
It's dorky, but it's fun. Yeah.
fun.
And they're like doing this whole thing, like raising their arms. We gotta turn it, clear the red. Everybody's going crazy, like, and I'm like, okay, I'm just turning at the burgers. Like, I'm not trying to. But it was fun. Overall, we had a great experience. I had a friend come up from Austin. We went out, after, and it was cool. It was a fun time. I don't know. I'd never spent that much time in Dallas, but at first I was like, it takes me 45 minutes to drive everywhere. I'm like, I want to go 6 miles that way, 45 minutes.
Yeah, definitely. It's impossible.
So it was kind of rough as far as that goes. And we were definitely in like the kind of cutty part of East Dallas. It was pretty much like, it was kind of the hood. So, but it was fine. We had no issues at all. But my buddy's like, do you want to go on a walk? I'm like, let's go to the mall and walk around, and it was cold outside. So it's like, I'm not trying to walk around at night when it's 40 degrees.
I'm a competition burger chef. I can't be like walking around like this.
I'm 7th in the world. I'm going to walk inside.
Yeah. So it was fun. Overall, we learned a lot. If we want to do it next year, we have kind of a better idea on how we can like actually do better. I think there would have been a couple things I could have done that would have probably put us in the top 5, and it was basically on appearance. So it was how we decorated our silly platter. Yeah.
Which to real chefs, excuse me, I don't know who I just offended with that. To people who genuinely care about the taste, it's like taste is the most important, but to other people, it's combination.
Well, it didn't look bad. It's just like they have all these weird little technicalities. Like, it was international burger themed, but they're like, but you can make it the burger from your own country. So if you're from America, you still make like a classic American burger. It was not like you had to make like a Korean burger.
Interesting.
But you had to then name your burger like accurately or like something that aligned with your international burger theme. So if it's America, I'm making like an American burger.
Red, white, and beef.
Right. Well, I'm making like, exactly. That actually, I should have done that.
You can have that.
Yeah. So like we're making like a smash burger. So you could say that's like an Oklahoma style smash burger, right? Onion burger, whatever you want to call it. Ours is our own thing, but that's essentially like what I'm going for. So like what would have been smart, because me and my guy that I brought with me, Jesse, we were at Hobby Lobby the night before, like, because we're like, what? We need to find American flags or something. And I named it some obscure thing because I didn't know what to name it. I didn't realize that I needed to align the name like with the theme, like the country theme.
Yeah.
So what I should have done is called it like a Route 66 burger and then put like little Route 66 patch or, an American flag and a bunch of little like 50s Hot Wheel cars, and they would have been like, "Oh, this is amazing! I don't even care about it's kind of silly, but I think that would have taken our appearance score up because it was 37 out of 40.
Yeah,
that would have at least brought us to 39
Interesting.
out of 40.
Yeah.
So anyway,
that's great.
It was fun.
We were having a conversation yesterday with a podcast guest about I guess the restaurant scene, she came from New York. And so kind of we're comparing like some of the things that she craved from New York that you might not be able to get here. And kind of the takeaway from that was kind of tongue in cheek, like people go start restaurants, more restaurateurs, more restaurants. But obviously that's easier said than done.
Right.
Opening a restaurant's hard. What do you think we could do as a community to, I guess, make that easier or more enticing for someone who maybe like, they're like good at what they do and they want, to open a restaurant. What can the community do to make that process less scary?
Yeah. I mean, I think it would be hard for me to say what people or the community could do at large, because the resources that I'm using are like, sure, I've read some books or listened to books on audiobooks or whatever, but I mean, a super valuable resource for this has been Facebook, and it's Facebook restaurant owner groups. So it's hard to say like, how could Northwest Arkansas help, because overall the laws aren't super, there's not like a huge barrier to entry, right? Like if you were in Los Angeles, it would be insane. Good luck, And I mean, you can make it as cheap as you want or as expensive as you want too. You can drop $500,000, have a bunch of loans, have a really beautiful place and whatever. And then hopefully you succeed. But we did not do that. We were like hitting the thrift store for our little art wall or whatever, we had some friends helping us shop for random things. But I was just trying to go for like, it's kind of just our style too. We just used a lot of art from our house also that we were like, we have nothing on our walls at home. Just put it at the restaurant. And so, I mean, our actual cost to start everything, it's different like when you look at your initial cost versus your cost over time, because over time to keep it going, to try and get everything like launched was costly. Just, paying our own bills with no income is super costly. So that is a little bit of different of a cost, or obviously it's more than just the initial, because the initial wasn't so bad. But keeping it going while you're trying to figure it out is obviously a little bit harder. But yeah, I mean, it's not. It can be hyper local as far as like Facebook groups. There are like Northwest Arkansas restaurant, whatever groups that I'm a part of. But also there's ones that are just literally global. So you see a lot of perspective. So, and people will, who have been in the business for 30 years will answer questions. And it's cool because I've never been one to want to ask questions. People always say, teachers are like, oh, there's no stupid question until you ask it. And they're like, everybody's like, what an idiot, yeah. And so I'm just like, I'll just lurk and watch other people ask stupid questions and it will benefit me. So yeah, I mean, I spend too much time on Facebook restaurant owner groups looking at like what pitfalls people are seeing over and over. I mean, a lot of it is waste, too big of a menu. Like it's this, it's what led us in the direction that we went.
Yeah.
Just because, we have like one commercial trash can for the whole restaurant. Just like, or not a commercial, a residential. So it's like a residential trash can.
Wow.
And we barely fill it every week because our menu's small and people eat their food and we don't have a lot of waste because we shop constantly. It's hard to do that. It's hard to like buck the system or whatever and not use a food distributor. So like, Fresh Point, Cisco, US Foods, Performance, whatever. We just don't use them because they don't have really anything that we want. We can't even like be like, oh, can you get us organic onions? No, we don't have that. There is KT produce locally, but we don't use a lot of produce. And so I was going to use them when I had this idea of like, a little, not necessarily fine dining, but a little bit more, I don't want to say elevated because I feel like even our burgers are slightly elevated, but just a little bit, I don't know, fancier, whatever.
Yeah.
So, but we're just not using that much produce. It's like really labor intensive to produce a menu that is more robust and has a lot more options and is even, like it's just more elevated. It would just take so much more money.
Yeah.
You just have to like bring more people in. You're constantly prepping and doing things. Everything is a multi-step process. I mean, of course, even making our mayo is, but it's relatively easy.
Right.
There's nothing we're doing that's so difficult. It's just as long as we do it the way we do it, we like to do it, it works. But, to try and do all that other stuff. So anyway, not using an actual distributor that just shows up at your door and brings you things is rough. But it allows us, we're constantly, we're like chickens running around with our heads cut off, but it makes it so that we can do it the way we want to do it.
Yeah. Well, as someone who, in the intro, we even said, and on all of your pages that you focus on sustainability, it's really refreshing for somebody. I had 6 months in the restaurant industry as a front of house person at Tacos for Life. Shout out.
Nice.
And so I've seen a little bit of the restaurant waste world, and it's really refreshing to hear from somebody who, not only is that something that you're passionate about, but like you're doing the hard works. Like I came in to eat yesterday at the restaurant just because I enjoy the food. Like this isn't sponsored. I bought my food. Like I genuinely just love the food. And you were just coming back from a run to pick up more bread. And so it's steps like that you have to take to actually put sustainability at the front of your business and not just say that you do it. And then behind the scenes, you cut corners. And so as someone who's just a consumer and like, I appreciate that you do go the extra mile and that you're not just like waving it in front of people's faces. Like, but look at all of these things that we did to show how sustainable. It's like, I didn't even know until you just said that, but it's refreshing that that's something that you believe in and then you practice and you're not flashy about it.
Right.
So that goes a long way.
I mean, we're not perfect, obviously. But that's what we're striving to do. That's what we're trying to do. So, and that's like whenever I thought about opening up a restaurant, I was always like, ugh, like thinking back to all the times that I had worked in restaurants where I was like just seeing so much food chucked in the trash.
Yeah.
And I was always like, ooh, this is hard. Because I grew up, my parents are kind of, sorry, mom and dad, they're a little bit pack ratty, a little hoardy. And so they don't I remember one time, it was probably 2007, maybe, let's just say. And I found it, let's say it was early 2000s, 2002, just to give my mom the benefit of the doubt. And I found breadcrumbs, like store-bought breadcrumbs. And it was marked, I think it was 96. It might have been 86. But
aged
very like fermented. And so I just I don't know if it's like Depression era parents that's what that comes from. But I would see kids growing up like throwing away their banana or their apple. And I'm like, I get it. I don't want the apple either, but take it home.
Yeah.
Even if you put it in your bag and you try and then it rots later because you forgot about it or whatever.
It's better than just throwing it away.
You didn't just chuck
There's a chance you might eat it later.
Right, yeah. So, anyway, I just, hate throwing food away.
Absolutely. Well, we can tell. We can tell like with how you practice those in your restaurant. So
for sure.
We appreciate it. Well, one way that we kind of land the plane with these podcasts is we ask you to go back in time to whatever point, whether that's before you started Pleasant Counter, before you moved to Northwest Arkansas, before you started your career, whatever that is. If you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice, what would you tell yourself?
Don't open a restaurant. No, I'm just kidding. No, honestly, we love it. So as far as giving myself advice, I would just say, I would just tell myself to do it quicker. But it's hard to know when you're like, there's a process, or if you don't have a process, which I'm not great with processes all the time. So I was kind of figuring out as I was going, but knew if I jumped into something and just rolled out a kind of a cookie cutter menu, I wouldn't be happy with it, we would be spread too thin, So it's kind of hard to say like, oh, go back and do it faster, because it took the time that it took for me to kind of figure out all of this. So, I mean, but if I could, that's that's what I would do. Because it probably took me from April until the fall. Oh, it almost took me a year or more to like really start to get customers in, because I wasn't like yelling for them to come in yet because I wasn't ready. So I was like purposely being too low key, which is good because I didn't want to get overwhelmed. I didn't want a line out or down the street the first month, and then after that, nothing. Because a lot of times if all you focus on is publicity or, self-promotion and saying, hey, like everybody, or even throwing money at it, like I'm sure a lot of people do. And that's why everyone knows about it or them. But I knew that if I did that and I wasn't ready for it, it was going to just totally flop. Yeah. So, I mean, I just spent a lot of time in the kitchen, just like cooking. And then once I knew what I was doing, once I felt comfortable doing what we were doing, like I could do it almost with my eyes closed. Sure, my systems are lacking and my processes are lacking, but I could still make burgers with my eyes closed, So, I mean, it's hard to say, to actually like say, oh, do it faster, because it took the time that it took, you know?
Keep going.
Yeah. Right. I mean, so yeah.
Awesome.
So
where can our listeners, viewers, however they're consuming this, learn more about you, connect with you, learn about the restaurant, connect with the restaurant? Yeah.
I mean, I am admittedly, I consume a lot on Facebook, but I don't post a lot on Facebook. It's just, it feels clunkier to me. I don't know. I should be doing it more, because really the like Northwest Arkansas Food Junkies, there's Springdale, Arkansas Collective, all these things that I should be posting in more often, but I don't. So I am on Instagram more, consuming and putting out stuff. Still, I'm trying not to overload people, because I can't stand when I see posts constantly, and then people, even if you don't want to, you like, your brain starts to go into ad blind mode, where you start to block people that post too much. You don't even know that you're annoyed by it, but you're annoyed by it.
And you just scrolling a little bit quicker.
Yeah. The stories, you're just like tap, 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 swoop, tap,
Yeah.
And so I try and not put out too much, maybe even to my detriment. But then I feel like if I post something or put something out, people actually are like paying more attention a little bit, just because they're not constantly inundated with stuff. But messaging, as far as that goes, like that's the best place to hit me up. But also, my personal phone number is the restaurant phone number. So my cell phone, you can just go on Google and literally call me or text
me.
Yeah, I know. But it actually gives me the ability to, like, if I miss a call for someone calling an order in, because like my wife will be working at the restaurant and I'm with the kids at home. And so someone will call and, like, let's just say I miss it, but they're calling in for a to-go order. And so I'll call them back and I'll just be like, hey, just, were you trying to place a to-go order? Sorry, I missed it. It's just a little bit more personal, I guess. It's, something that most people wouldn't do. So, but it's kind of our whole thing is like, there's not a lot of restaurants that you can go in and talk to the owner and like actually have the owner bust your table, like wash your dishes, make your food, take your order. So, I think people like it. But yeah, text, phone call, Instagram, Facebook. I'll still see it. It just might take a little bit longer.
Cool.
Well, Ahren, thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
We appreciate it.
Thank you guys. Appreciate y'all.
Ecosystem builders, entrepreneurs, chambers of commerce, mayors. If you're interested in taking your economic future into your own hands, we've got a book that can help you. Creating Startup Junkies, Building Sustainable Venture Ecosystems in Unexpected Places is the guide. It's a little bit inspiration. It's a little bit toolkit. What it will allow you to do is take your economic future into your own hands and build a sustainable small business, innovation, and entrepreneurial ecosystem in your backyard. If you'd like to hear more, check out creatingstartupjunkies.com. The Startup Junkie podcast reaches over 100 countries and has had over 100,000 downloads. If you're interested in reaching some of the most motivated and engaged innovators and entrepreneurs on a worldwide basis, give us a shout.